So good morning, everyone. Are your notes ready?
Yes,
For
ma'am.
you? Very
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's start with the first lesson, which is the search for the atom. So to start with, the search of the atom comes kanang in a vision of Leucippus that when a wall is created, it is created by small pieces of rock. So ni siya dili ba kahaang tanan matter ingon ana. That's why Leucippus was reportedly the first person to conceive the idea that matter is made up of tiny particles. And he called these particles as atomos. And then, after that, Democritus studied it well, and then he comes up with his own definition. And that is, atoms were invisible, indestructible, meaning you cannot divide it, and the smallest particle of matter. They differ in shape, size, weight, sequence, and position. So during this time, a thinker named Empedocles also believed that the earth, uh, air, fire, and water were the main elements of all matter. So, for example, a metal is made up of earth and fire. So, mo na ilahang hunahuna that matter is made up of these four elements. That is according to Empedocles. Now, years after, Dalton created his theory. Now, his theory lasts for a long time, 100 years, a century. It is because it is backed up by the fundamental laws of nature, and that is the uh, law of definite proportion and the law of conservation of mass, which we will discuss later on. So, for Dalton's atomic theory, he has this postulates that all matter is composed of extremely small particles called atoms, and that atoms of a given element are identical in size, mass, and other properties. Atoms of different elements differ in size, mass, and other properties. In short, atoms of the same element are identical, while if they are not the same element, so they are not identical. Atoms cannot be subdivided, created, or destroyed. Atoms of different elements can be combined in simple whole number ratios to form chemical compounds. So, dili de pwede nga isa, to form water, isa ka hydrogen, ay isa ka oxygen, or I mean, tama, isa ka hydrogen and then katunga sa oxygen, dili pwede nga ingon ana. So dili pwede nga mag-combine ta og chemical elements in half. Kay again, going back to his third postulate, atoms cannot be divided or cannot be subdivided, nor it could be destroyed. So it should be a whole atom combined with another whole atom. So in chemical reactions, atoms are combined, separated, or just rearranged. So that is chemical reaction or chemical change. Dalton's atomic theory has been largely accepted by the scientific community for about a century because uh, because of this kanang law of conservation of mass and the law of definite proportion. So the fundamental laws of nature, one of which states that the uh, the element, after they get into a chemical reaction, their mass is conserved. So mo nang itag law of conservation of mass, meaning maski pag kinsa ilahang ka-combine, their mass will not change. Now, in definite composition, it says that uh, the composition states that a given chemical compound always contains its component element fixed ratio. Say, for example, we all know that water is made up of 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. Kung dugangan mo na siya isa ka hydrogen, that is no longer a molecule of water. that becomes hydronium. Then, if you add another oxygen, that is no longer also a water molecule. That becomes a hydrogen peroxide, or what we call agua oxinada. So the property of the compound changes if the composition also changes. So there, when we say definite composition, their ratio is fixed. So dili ni mo siya pwedeng i-change. The law of multiple proportion states that if two elements form more than one compound, then the ratio of these masses of the second element, which combine with the fixed mass of the first element, will always be a ratio of small whole numbers. So when we say multiple proportion, say for example, carbon and hydrogen. So are you familiar with LPG? Who are familiar with
Yes, ma'am.
LPG?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
LPG
Yes, ma'am.
stands for liquefied petroleum gas, diba? So it is made up of different forms of gases, and in these gases, it is made up of carbon and hydrogen, but of different ratio. Na ay tawag na tog methane, which is made up of 1 carbon with 4 hydrogen. Natagitawag og ethane, which is made up of 2 carbons and 6 hydrogen. So, and then naapod tagitawag og propane. We have 3 carbons and 8 hydrogen. So mga ingon-ana sila. Though kapareha sila, carbon and hydrogen, but they are made up of multiple proportion. And that's the reason why they are also stands different compounds. So kung imong usubon ang proportion ana niya sa isa ka molecule, then it becomes another compound. Nasabtan? Any question? Ayo. Any question? Nabay question dito nga part? If none, then we will continue. Discovery of the subatomic particles. Now, the first subatomic particle that was discovered was the electron. It is discovered by J.J. Thomson, and his discovery for this electron is accidental. Thomson had this kaning cathode ray tube, and then na-curious siya unsa ning light nga niagi diri sa cathode ray tube. Excuse me, a little class ha. Later na. So, to test the property of this kanang light, anong nagtuo siya particle ng light, which diba we all know, because light is made up of both particles and wave. But during those time, ang ilang pagtuo, ang light is made up of particle. Kaya mo na giingon ni Newton that light is made up of particles. So Thomson becomes very kanang curious about what type of particle made this light. Kaning nag-travel din he from anode to this fluorescent screen. So ang yung first gibuhat is gi-identify niya na ba ni siya charge. So pag lantaw niya, when he put the magnet, the light bends. So it means the light is affected with the presence of magnetic field. And because the light is affected with the presence of magnetic field, and it means that the light has a charge. So to determine the charges of the plates, so I mean the charges of the light, so he put positive plate above and a negative plate below. Then he turned on the high voltage battery, after turning it on, the light bends towards the positive plate. So we all know the law of nature that positive and negative always attract. So if the light bends towards the positive plate, it means that the light is attracted by the presence of the positive. So kaya na-attract man siya sa positive, it means this light is negative. Now, J.J. Thomson determined the mass to charge ratio of the cathode ray, which is negligible. That is also according to the kanang another experiment. So daghay nag-experiment and they found out that the mass of the electron is almost negligible. So Thomson repeated his experiment using different metals as electrode material and found that the properties of the cathode remained constant no matter what cathode material they originate from. So because of this, Thomson discovered gradually accepted by the scientists. Eventually, his cathode ray particles were given a more familiar name, which is electrons. The discovery of the electron proved that the part of Dalton's atomic theory assumed atoms were indivisible. In order to account for the existence of the electrons, an entirely new atomic model was needed. So, before, nagunahuna sila nga dili ma-divide ang atom. And then, with the discovery of this cathode ray particle, nga gitawag nilag electron, nakaingon sila ay sayop di ay si Dalton. Atoms can be divided. So, motong ningon sila nga dapat daw magbag-o sila og atomic model. Kaya atomic model is just a lingin man, pure lingin. So, Thomson comes up with his new model. Gitawag niya og katong raisin cookie model. Nga ang katong mga raisins mo ang negative and then ang katong cookies is a cloud of positively charged matter. So, then, after that, kani si Ernest Rutherford, gusto niya ma-prove ang model ni Thomson kung correct ba gid ni siya, mabagid ni siya itsura sa atom. So, Ernest Rutherford gave the task to his student Ernest si Ernest Gihapon to recreate or to make an experiment proving the model of Thomson to be true. So they come up with this setup. They call it the gold foil experiment, where the gold foil is bombarded with alpha particle and then surrounded with this filament. This screen can detect scattered light, alpha particle. So ang nahitabo, pag bombard nila dinha, some light deflects and some even bounce back and some deflected in great angle. So kung ingon ani ang iyang hitsura, the alpha particle would either stay on the surface sa imong atom or mosulod dito kay cloud raman ni siya of positively charged matter. Kinsay nakita og kanang airplane na trap sa cloud? Nabay nakakita sa inyo kag airplane nga na trap sa cloud? Anyone?
Wala, ma'am.
Wala. So kung cloud dai ni siya, kung naay nagpadulong nga kusog kay mo dagan, bahala pag nakay negative particles dinha, ma-neglect ra na sila. Makasulod ra siya didto kay kusog man kayo ang dagan sa kanang alpha particle nga iyang gibombard. So the beam of alpha particles travel too fast na dapat ang iyang mo diretso ra siya dinha. Pero natingala sila nga naman nga na ay nag-deflect. So si Ernest Marsden, the student of Ernest Rutherford, come up with this along with Ernest Rutherford. Si Ernest Rutherford man iyang teacher, so they come up with this model. Na kung ang Thomson nga model dapat mo diretso ra siya, but because there is a presence of something massive in the center that causes some of the alpha particles to deflect or some even bounce back or muliko o gamay. So mo na nahitabo nga no. And they call this massive center as the nucleus, wherein the nucleus, kaya nga nung nag-bounce back sila or ni-deflect sila, it's because it has the same charge as that of the alpha particles. So pareha di sila og charge. So kay pareha man sila charge, the alpha particle is a positively charged beam of light. Then these particles also present in the kanang sa tawag-ana center or in the nucleus is also positive. So they come up with a new model. Mao din ni siya ang model ni Rutherford. So naa siya mga negative na nagtuyok sa gawas, and then naa siya positive sa center. So, and then after that, to make the story short, kani si daghan na kay sila nag-study sa atom. Here comes James Chadwick. He bombarded beryllium atom with alpha particle. An unknown radiation was produced. Then Chadwick interpreted this radiation as being composed of particles with neutral electrical charge. So nakaingon siya nga dili ra di ay positive ang nasa kanang nucleus. Kay kung positive ra pod, ang mahitabo mo shrink ang imong atom nganong ma-shrink siya. In negative nagdagan-dagan sa gawas, and unless the negative runs very fast. Pero kung gradual lang po ang iyang pagdagan, na siya tendency nga ma-attract tungod kay dagko kayo ang kanang positive. Imagine that the positively charged particles is the center of the mass of the atom. So ning siya 1/2 ra pod sa mass sa atom ang ma-cover sa positive. So there must be another particles that added to the mass of the atom, almost negligible man ang mass ni electron. So therefore, naa siya uncharged particle, which he called as the neutrons. That is the birth of the 3 subatomic particles. Because of the birth of these 3 subatomic particles, the theory of Dalton was no longer used. But dili tanan, naagi hapon na nagamit nila kaning all matters composed of extremely small particles called atom. It is still true. Atoms of given elements are identical in size, mass, and other properties. Atoms of different elements differ in size, mass, and other properties. It's still true. Atoms of different element can combine in simple whole number ratio to form chemical compounds. Is still true. What is no longer true in his 4 postulates is the atoms cannot be subdivided, created, or destroyed. Because atom can be divided, can be created, and can be destroyed. So later on, when kanus-an nato na siya ma-learn. So that is pag nag-story at the chemical reaction, at this is true. True ni siya that you cannot divide atom. You cannot create atom. You cannot destroy an atom if we are talking about chemical reaction. But if we are talking about atomic reaction, so that is when we have the fusion and the fission. So that is a different story. Dili na siya applicable nga postulate niya. Any question with the discovery of the 3 subatomic particles? Question? Wala? So let's continue. So in a symbol, in writing an element, dili natin isulat ang tibok niyang pangalan, but we just write their symbol. So I hope by this time you already have your periodic table. So the atomic number is the number of protons in the atom. So based on this kanang symbol, atomic number is found on this part. Naa siya sa lower left part. Left sa ako, right siguro sa inyo ha, something. Kung mag-atubang mo sa dianhin. So this part, inanan siya pagsalat. This is the atomic number, which represents the number of proton. Nganong proton ang gibasihan? So kaganina, di ba ang ato ang nakita, pag-determine ni Thomson sa electron, it is because the electron leaves the atom. While ang pag-determine ni Rutherford sa proton is because naalang siya na trap sa iyahang nucleus. While si James Chadwick discovered the kanang neutron is because nigawas pod siya sa iyahang atom. So, the only subatomic particle that will not leave the atom is the proton. That is why the identity of the atom depends on the identity or the number of protons inside it. So, kung if nagbago ang number of proton, nag-change og identity ang atom. So, that is when you have your atomic reaction, or what we call as the nuclear reaction. So mass number is the sum of protons and neutrons. So say for example here, this carbon has 14 mass number. It means it has 6 protons. 14 minus 6 is equal to 8. Therefore, it has 8 neutrons. Then we have an isotope. An isotope is an atom which has a different number of neutrons. So carbon has C12 and C14. Unsa ning C12 and C14? Say kalainan nani. Si C12 has 6 proton and 6 electron. Mo na siya ang normal nga carbon, mo na siya ang neutral nga carbon atom. But ang ginagamit na to for carbon dating, are you familiar with carbon dating? Hello? Naa pa mo? Should I check?
No, ma'am.
You're not familiar with carbon dating?
Dili,
Carbon
ma'am.
dating is a process where they determine the age of an artifact. So ilang ginagamit din ha is ang carbon. So example, na ay bungo nakitaan sa isa ka cave. Gusto nila mabalaan kano sa ni nag-live, kano saan ni siya nga bungo na-create, kano saan ni siya na natawo. So para ma-determine nila ang age ato niya, lantawo nila ang carbon ato niya. So manang gitawag og carbon dating. So they use C14 in carbon dating kani siya, where the carbon has 6 proton and 8 neutron. Ion, on the other hand, is an atom which has the same number of proton but different number of electron. So an atom could be both an isotope and an ion at the same time. Pwede siya na pwede siya nag-release siya og iyahang neutron, at the same time nag-release siya og iyahang electron. So example, let's have an example. Share whiteboard. What element do you like?
Ma'am, excuse me, mura ko'y ask.
Sige. Unsa man do
What if, ma'am, para sila og number of protons, neutrons, og electrons?
It is just called
Dili
an
siya
atom.
matawag.
It is just
Dili siya matawag. Dili, ma'am, ang unsay type sa iyang particle?
atom. Just an atom, a neutral atom.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So, kung dili magpareha iyahang neutron, that is isotope. Kung dili magpareha iyahang electron, then that is an ion. So if none of them, so it's just a normal atom. It is just a neutral atom. Am I clear? So
Yes,
say for
ma'am.
example,
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
let's have helium. Helium has an atomic number of 2. And then say for example, its mass atomic number mass number is 4. Now, how many protons are there? And the charge is 0. So pwede na siya naa or pwede pod wala. So kung wala gani siya gisulat dira, it means it doesn't have a charge. So how many protons are there?
2, ma'am.
2, ma'am.
Very good. How many electrons are there?
2.
2.
Wala charge.
Okay, wala may. So, mag-differ siya kung na siya charge. How about neutron? How many neutrons are there? How do we know the number of neutrons? So, we will know the number of neutrons when we subtract the atomic number to the mass number. So, 4 minus 2, so we have 4 minus 2 is equal to 2. So, this is just simple atom or a neutral atom. How about let's have nitrogen for that matter. What is the atomic number of nitrogen? Anyone? Atomic
7, ma'am.
7, ma'am.
7. Aha naman to. So, atomic number is 7. And then let's have the let's have 13. And then this is negative 3. So how many protons are there?
7, ma'am.
7, ma'am.
How many electrons are there?
6.
6.
Ha? 6. We have, no, electrons. Electrons man.
10,
So we
ma'am.
already have 7 because the number of electron here, a proton here, 7. Pero naamo ko siya negative 3. So it means, napa siya sobra nga tulo. So
It's
there
10.
are 10 electrons. Kay this negative, it means sobra siya sa imuhang atomic number og tulo ka buok electron. So mo nang nasay negative 3. So 7, which is already present in there, plus 3 nga gidonate sa iya from somewhere, so it becomes 10. How about neutron? We have 13
6.
minus 7,
6.
6. So this particle, so this is an example of an ion, and at the same time, it is also an isotope. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
is just how we determine if it is a simple atom, an ion, or an isotope. That is based on their kanang mga numbers diri. How about if we have boron? What is the atomic number of boron?
5, ma'am.
5.
5, ma'am.
Say, for example, this is 11, and this is positive 3. How many protons are there?
5.
5.
How many electrons are there?
2.
Electron. Very good. So you have 5. Since you have here positive 3, it means that the protons exceeds by 3. So that means minus 3. So kung sa iyahang kanang kung sa iyahang charge din ha, opposite ang inyong ibutang di anhi. Nakasabot? So 5 minus 2
Yes, ma'am.
is left with
Yes, ma'am.
electron. It means that boron releases 3 of its electron. Neutron is equal to 11 minus 5 is equal to 6.
6.
So, the same sila. Ion and isotope. Parihara sila nga kanang type of particle. They are both ion and isotope. So, an ion could be a positively charged particle, negatively charged particle or positively charged particle. So, those are the two types of ion. Going back to our discussion, so that is how we determine the number of subatomic particles. Let's go to, let's have a break for about 5 minutes. Okay, almost 5 na daw. Okay, we will be back. Ako lang i-post dito sa GC ang kanang link. Goodbye for now, class.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you.